opening that file anymore, but I will have that pawn as a major source of annoyance for you for the rest of the game. And it also provokes black into perhaps putting their bishop on some unfavorable squares. So those two things are more or less diametrically opposite in spirit. Knight takes f7 is a massive mess, and h6 knight g4 is a way to play a much more conservative game. So it's interesting to see what Prague comes with here.
And he's taking his time. He's taking his time, he's calculating all these options. What are we hoping for? Where is the fire? Is it knight f7, h6? I want to see one of these two moves on the board.
You know, I also like d3, believe it or not. I mean, you always look for crazy moves here, obviously. If it doesn't work, then you go for the conservative. This is what I learned from Grandpa
d3 is not happening.
Yeah, but of course, right. d3, the idea is just sacrificing exchange. It's not necessary, though. Putting the queen on a1 because of the whole diagonal and the dark squares could be weak.
Wow.
But it's not necessary to do. But you do want to throw these out there and to see if it works. And he just goes for, like, you know, he went in the think tank and he came out and said, none of this is necessary. Just go knight e4.
Keeping it solid.
Right.
Knight e4. Very natural move there, and now white has got the idea of capturing black's pawn on c5, and of course the move h6 is always in the air. Also ideas of advancing the pawn, opening up the bishop, keeping all the trumps in the position.
Very nice.
But Prague is down by almost 4 minutes on the clock, and we're barely out of the opening.
Wow.
This game is happening on all sides of the board. You know, usually you have one plan. Either you play on the king side or the queen side or in the center.
Right.
Suddenly there's this play on the king side, now in the center.
Both kings in the center, no
Right.
castling. We're basically throwing all the traditional chess rules out of the window.
No castling chess here.
Alright, let's take a look at our other boards. This one will be a complicated middle game battle. Look at Pragnananda on the screen. He's ready for that, ready to go. He's the one on fire. We'll see if he can get another point for the SG Alpine Warriors. This is our overview. Master Swidler, what catches your attention?
I wanted just to briefly point out that that brief discussion you had about the previous games between the players and also your general form in the event. I think it's very much evident on board 2 there, because Gukesh is one of the most ambitious players in the chess world today. And in this particular game, he's very clearly just playing to have a 0% chance of losing. It also limits his winning chances to pretty close to the same 0, frankly. But the way he's been playing, I think he and the team probably came to the conclusion that it's important for him to shake off some of the disappointment of how the tournament has been going until now. Play one safe game, get back to feeling a bit better about life and things in general, and then maybe he will go back to playing much more ambitiously for a win.
And Peter, do you think this is a board for you, Yangi, for the Triveni Continental Kings to actually try to get an advantage given Gukesh's form?
I think they were very ready to try, but this particular position doesn't really give you, you know, very much in a way of even attempts to play for a win. It's just very symmetrical. That last move by Yuanyi is perhaps a slight nod in that direction, because he could have traded queens there with a very, very equal position, but he preferred to keep the queens on. Perhaps if, you know, Gukesh's best instincts take over and he remembers who he is and starts playing from here, we could still see a sharp game. But in general, I think that the setup from white is aimed squarely at just making a draw.
Very solid here, but all the action and the drama is on the icon board. Let's quickly use this opportunity to head over to Magnus Carlsen taking on Levon Aronian. These two are titans of the game. They've played each other a bunch of times, and always fascinating fights, and once again, a really feisty position.
What I like about these type of positions is that, you know, I like to play the knight f3, b3 stuff, where I just want to attack you and castle queen side. And it may even be wrong, but of course, that's practical. I'm going to play a human here, and you're going to have to figure it out, and I'm going to try to checkmate you many times. Now, actually, what Levon said is, I'm not going to castle king side. You're not going to get that opportunity at all. So he went castle queen side as well, giving this more of an equal way of playing here, which is Magnus is fine with that. So I think actually he handled this very well, him meaning Levon. Having the queen on a3 here, the dark squares are kind of weak. The bishop on h7 is pretty strong, quite annoying. But also we have the bishop on g2 doing the same thing.
Guys, what about that knight on d7? Is it planning to come from, you know, somewhere to b4 from a6?
Maybe
Interesting
b8.
idea.
Knight b8, a6, yeah, or knight c5, knight a6, knight b4, very possible.
And imagine once the knight lands on b4, I know what you want, Samir. You're an aggressive player. You want the queen and the knight to give checkmate to the white king. And that could be definitely a plan to create play. Also notice the two bishops and how the pawns are actually limiting their activity. For the black bishop stuck by white's pawn chain on these squares, the white bishop is currently inactive because of black's own pawn chain, keeping the king safe. I really like the knight maneuver that you're pointing out, Samir.
Also, can't we just develop the rook which is still not in the game? On h8, we get a free tempo if we attack the queen. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, I'm going to take that as fast as you put it there, Samay.
Putting it, and you're taking it.
I'm going to take it immediately. And after takes, rook takes, and maybe we just double. We could double on the file with rook e1, rook d to e1 is very possible. But there may be some better moves there. But the problem is that it's going to take a while to get that knight in there. And it might not be a good night for you, of course, because of the rooks.
Not even going to be a good day for you in this position.
Good night, okay?
It's going to be a good night for the position.
You know what I mean? Exactly right. And it's going to be pretty rough here. It's definitely difficult to face this, especially as strong as someone like Magnus Carlsen.
Wow.
That's not even considered rookie A.
But it's a great idea. If black
Absolutely.
can find a way to actually defend the rook on this square and get it into the game, yes, but right now it's not the move you want to make. Instead, Levon Aronian making a committal decision, advancing the pawn. Master Peter Swidler, what do you think about this? Because this wasn't on my radar.
Yeah, I did not expect that move at all. And at first glance, one thing you will say about it is that the white knight, which until that move was played onto the board, did not really have any prospects whatsoever. You would be hard pressed to name a square you want to aim it towards. Now he definitely has a very good square to hope for, but Jan Krzysztof clearly wants to develop some kind of counterplay, and he wants to perhaps put the rook on the f-file next move and suggest to Magnus that the pawn on f4 could potentially be a bit of a target. Yeah, Magnus immediately goes knight f3. It does feel like this is where this piece belongs. Yeah, interesting choice by Levon. I trust Levon to be very much on point in these types of positions, but it's definitely not a move I even considered, so...
It's also so counterintuitive because you block your own bishop by pushing your pawn.
That is true, but on the other hand, that bishop wasn't really, doing very much. You've very correctly described it as being heavily restricted by the white pawn chain, so it's not feeling much worse now that it was a move ago.
Wow. A committal decision there by Levon, and Magnus immediately jumping with the knight, taking advantage of the weakened squares because of that last move. Levon behind on the clock currently by 3 minutes.
Guys, if the knight comes to e5 where it wants to come, like Master Peter said, will it be a good idea for black to recapture that knight with his own knight? Because then after that happens, there's no, there's nothing that black is actually playing for. In fact, white has the open file on the e file, queen on a3 is looking hopeless. Everything is developed. Do you think that is something he should be scared of, Levon?
The problem is with 95 after taking, you can take with the pawn, and then we just gotta pass e-pawn for nothing at all. So of course, yes, it may be equal, but practical chances it will be difficult. In fact, you see this a lot in the Grunfeld positions where even Master Spiller is the master of Grunfeld. You actually do have a d-pawn problem sometimes where the white has a d-pawn that's very fast, but black has compensation of holding it, maybe even winning it at some point after 95. We can take this pawn and use it maybe, honestly, for our good if we're able to keep this pass pawn. We got to take on g4. Master Spiller.
I think that's logical. I just want to bring up briefly, we don't need to change the view, but something I suspected might happen did happen on board 2, where Yuan Yi dangled the carrot in front of Gukesh, and Gukesh said, "Yeah, I remember. I'm a very strong chess player who is one of the most promising talents to have come in the last 2 generations. I'm not going to play for a draw anymore." And this is now a pretty fighting, sharp position all of a sudden. So very nice to see that, and something that I suspected might happen, but not so quickly.
This is suddenly blowing up, and we do see Levon Aronian put pressure on the weak f4 pawn. White needs to find a way to defend it, and a potential idea is that white, in fact, if you do push the pawn, you're using your pawn chain to block the bishop. At a good moment, black can strike. The best way to get rid of a pawn chain is to strike at the base, and that's this pawn, and we can potentially see an h5 advance kicking away that base, and that could be a big issue in the position. But right now, big questions from Magnus Carlsen. Will he take the committal decision of pushing the pawn, or will he find another way to safeguard it? is this a good moment to jump to the other games?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Let's bring up our bird's eye view and take a look at the action that's happening all around. As Master Peter pointed out, that there have been some developments on that board number 2, but also all over. Look at that bottom left board. Wow. 3 pawns advanced on the 6th rank. Pragnananda trying to create weaknesses on his opponent's king side. What are we expecting there?
Definitely some fireworks. We gotta take a look at that game for sure. Open H file there. It feels like we should castle queenside, but then again, the king can actually run away. That F6 move is pretty crafty, I think. I mean, it looks kind of weird, but the king eventually could run away to F7 and over to E8 if it gets really, really bad.
And you could challenge on the H line with your own rook, but look at that. Instead, Jonas, he continues to pursue Black's
Wow.
pieces. And let's do a quick action replay here. The queen was attacked. Instead of defending the queen, Jonas attacks the bishop. The bishop falls back. He doesn't care. He goes up with the pawn, one move further, attacks the knight. But every pawn move creates weaknesses. And with the last one, we do see a big hole on G5.
Can you not come back with the bishop on G5, attack the queen once more? This time there's no pawn to push.
Great question, Sameh, and it's definitely a possibility. You say, you're attacking my knight, I'm going to get to the queen. Black will sidestep with the queen, and once again, you will be left with a decision to move with the knight. Just be a little careful. Do not get greedy by capturing the pawn, because this could mean a big check, and you actually end up losing your piece.
Absolutely.
That's
that is not a
exactly
move.
what I would have played.
That is not a move there. In fact, after a knight G5, I am a fan of knight G5 and trying to get the queen to B3 so I can take on E6. Nice idea. Definitely with the bishop on D2 deters
It's
at
on the
knight
board,
A5.
knight G5.
Knight to G5. Of course, definitely a move you have to play. Maybe you might go queen A4 and try to swing over to H4 as well.
And the idea is to try to double up to set up a rifle on the H line so that you can give a checkmate here. James is pointing out the path. You come with the queen on one side of the board and then swing all the way to the other side. That's a bad arrow by
So,
me.
wow, Ben, that one's new, Tyan.
That's a never seen before move. It's not
Nice.
going to happen, but you
Nice.
can swing to the other side of the board, line up on the H line and start threatening checkmate already. This could start getting tricky. Meanwhile, how does Black defend? One idea is you could step up with your bishop, hit the knight, and then eventually try to get your king up.
He
and
just
challenge
stood up.
the
Look at the flex. That's a flex there. Let me walk away.
Oof.
Make you think about this one, big dog.
With
Making
4 minutes
17.
on the clock. That's
With
a big
4
flex.
minutes, made in 17, he says. Walks away and looking at the games. That's a flex from Young Bragg.
A brief update, no particular need to go there until the handshake, which will be coming momentarily, but board 5 will be a draw between Elizabeth Bates and Sarah Hadem.
Wow.
Wow. So Elizabeth Pads versus Sarah Kadem could potentially end in a draw. But we will stick to this one for just a moment because it is a big critical position for Black. And Pragnananda, they're looking confident, just walking around, looking at the other boards. He's down to less than 5 minutes on the clock. How's he feeling about his chances in this one? Pretty good.
He's feeling real good, especially when you walk away like that. Oh, yeah, he's feeling great. F4. I don't think he was looking at that one. I don't think anybody spotted that move. In fact, F4? Is that really on the board? It is on the board.
It's on the board.
It is on the board here. Whoa, Prank's
Oh, he actually removed the defender of the knight.
Absolutely. That's why it's so strong. It also hitting G3 as well, saying your king's in the center still, Prag. Your king is still in the center right now. So you're going to have to deal with this right now.
That king is staying in the center for a while, and as Master Swidler mentioned, we will stay on this game with a big result update that board number 5 has finished with a draw between Elizabeth Pats and Sarah Kadem, but it's all eyes on this one. Fire on the board with Black's last move, trying to create counterplay. What do we make of this? Master Swidler, this is getting out of hand.
It is becoming extremely sharp, and Jonas Bjerg is doing sort of the right thing, pouring oil onto the fire here, because he doesn't really want to wait until White develops an attack along that open H file. He wants to open some files for himself. And Prague actually, somewhat surprisingly to me, goes for the somewhat materialistic route here, trading the bishop for the knight on d5, and next move he will take that intruder on the f4 square. I think probably with the pawn, but with the bishop is also playable. But that does give Black very nice play on the open lines in the center.
Wow.
The rook, which is currently in the corner doing not very much, will be brought into the game towards the e8 square. The white king is very stuck in the center. This is going to be a very sharp game to predict. Takes with the bishop. Yeah, I was wondering which way he'll go here. Takes with the bishop. I guess now that the bishop is slightly more active, you can support it with your e-pawn in the future and just put the king on f1 and hide the king behind that bishop, which will be very difficult to attack because black has no real ways to attack it with any pawns.
Very
You see
nice.
full control on that bishop, James. A really nice idea. White has an extra pawn, but black has a lot of play as well. You see this bishop, it's down on the diagonal, always threatening to pick up the pawn. Meanwhile, the rook can't join the party. But one very instructive moment right here. Jonas feeling the pressure, feeling the heat. He takes this moment and instead of trying to get passive, he goes for it. He says, I'm going to be brave here. I'm going to try and create my own chances. Going for the offense is the best way to defend. And we see that with that move. And now with the trade, an extra pawn, but a lot of activity for black. This is a game for all three results.
Absolutely. In fact, you never would expect to get these type of positions, which you can. You can actually make any position as sharp as you would like to, or any opening, in fact. And this started as a ready opening, and the ready opening is not actually one that you would see these type of positions with the open H file. Of course, you can't make it happen like that, like the Catalan H4s and Castle Queenside. This is actually very similar here. It's a ready opening, kind of looked like it was an E4 opening, but the pawn is still on E2, so this is definitely a sharp game.
Why don't you just take the B2 pawn that's free? Like, I would have just grabbed it, it's free.
Just grab it right now. Grab it on B2, he says, and bishop back to C3 as well. Let's check.
It's a good question, Sama. He can take that pawn, hitting the rook, and if white was to attack the bishop, you can give a check. White sidesteps with the king, but the problem with this line is that white anyway wanted to get the king here, and now there are ideas of the rook jumping onto the 7th rank. You're firing down the board, you're gonna get your other rook into the attack, and black just loses a lot of time. That bishop is required to stay exactly where it is to keep the position under control.
Wow. So that's a poison pawn then, you shouldn't take it.
It's a risky one to take.
Risk.
You might not lose immediately, but you're asking for trouble by giving white all the moves that he wants to make anyway. I would be very tempted as black to bring all the pieces to the party, get that rook to the center of the board, start eyeing the E-line. And we will use this moment to zoom out, get a bird's eye view, because the board I want to go to is our icon board. And we see that on the top right. A very fascinating position.
Ooh.
Let's bring up
Isn't that the
Magnus
top left?
Carlsen taking on Levon Aronian. Top left. My bad. Good call there, Summer. Making it wrong because simply all the boards are so fascinating.
Right.
They could very well have been top right, but
Right.
this one indeed a big fight. And we see a strange bishop here. This could have been a pawn, and I wouldn't have known.
Oh, that's a bishop? Oh, I didn't even know.
What
I mean,
bishop?
that's not a bishop
Where?
to me, but okay. We'll okay.
And interestingly,
Quite
the
okay.
plan that Samai was talking about, which seemed somewhat far-fetched at the time, is now very much materializing because black is one move away. If black is to move here, I think black is just winning with the move knight f6 to d5, creating threats of knight c3 and knight b4. That's the one that Samai was talking about earlier. So Magnus has one move here to find something to do against that massive, massive threat. My first idea was you can still play queen to e7, offer the queen trade, and black will have to, change tack and do something else. But currently, I'm not sure what white is doing here if black just goes c6, c5, and says no queen trade for you. Perhaps rook
Oof.
e5 is very strong though.
Rook d5, yeah, that's probably... Yikes, that's a
And you're
strong
first
move.
to black's king.
And 95,
Oh,
take it.
nice. And tactics everywhere. That's deflection. You know, the rook was overloaded, and now you just go on to win the other rook. So queen e7 would be an idea for Magnus, offering a queen trade. If black was to accept, that's good news for white. You jump in with your rook. You're threatening all the pawns along the 7th rank. But Magnus currently in a think tank.
Yeah, this is like,
Both
where do you
pairs
even go?
under 4 minutes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And there's actually no other way to defend it, right? Like, you cannot stop the knight coming from d5 in any other way. Maybe you can go c4, but I think that's not good.
Yeah, c4 en passant,
It
or en
would be
croissant.
great. But then, James,
En croissant there.
this might look illegal, but it's completely legal. Black can in fact capture the pawn this way. This is en
What?
passant. Getting rid
That
of
is a
that
move.
pawn. You're up an extra pawn. The knight is still jumping in. The D line opens up. This would be a bad idea. But in theory, a really nice point. That if white had the option to control the square,
Right.
great point.
Massive turnaround on the Prodigy board, by the way, because Prague, who perhaps forgot how to play with the white pieces, hasn't seen them in 5 days. his last two moves are very uncharacteristically imprecise, and he is in a lot of trouble right now. And there is a very cute tactic on the board as well, which allows us to demonstrate some ideas.
Let's bring it up. Let's bring up board number 6, and there we see Master Swidler mentioning that there has been a big turnaround. Let's bring up our analysis board.
Yeah, this has gone very pear-shaped for Prague. Already the queen move seemed very suspect to me, and then he followed it up with playing very much into Jonas Pierre's tactics by playing e3, and now Black makes a temporary queen sacrifice.
Ooh.
Not a difficult tactic, but still a very beautiful one, sacrificing a queen to give his knight access to that beautiful f3 square.
Wow.
And the problem for Prague is if you just recapture here on d2 after rook takes f2, you're completely lost. So he has to find a way to do something smarter, but I really don't know what that is. You can play, instead of king d1, maybe you can play king e2 after the check. He still hasn't taken the queen, but I also don't know how to avoid it. Perhaps you play long castles right now?
And he has only 35 seconds, guys.
35 seconds. This potentially could be Prague's first
loss. Yeah, it's tough, especially being as far as he's came here as well. You can tell from the jitters here. He's shaking of the leg there as you saw the body movement, flipping, looking back at the clock here,
Guys,
definitely understanding this is tough.
entire game is full of, surprises, because Prague is actually losing his first game here. Meanwhile, Gukesh is actually doing very well in his game.
Magnus is in trouble, so there's a lot of very interesting and unusual things going on. Yeah, and Prague does long castle. I guess this was always the plan. It doesn't look great, even if Black does something fairly simple, but you could also try to sort of go in for the kill. The line I like the most currently is queen to g4. I think you have to take the knight now, because otherwise you have to allow knight to check, and rook e2 coming in. And this looks massively dangerous for white. I just don't like this for white at all.
Wow, big trouble for Prague, down to 18 seconds on the clock. He's currently down a piece. He could not have captured the queen. That would have walked into a lost endgame. Prague trying to create chaos on the board with that last move of long castle, but it looks like it still favors Jonas as long as he can find queen g4, and he does it. Immediately Prague recaptures. Will Jonas step in with the rook on the 7th rank? This is looking big trouble for white, James.
Yeah, this is definitely big trouble here. And the problem with being hyper-aggressive is what I call this style of play of what I saw in Prague here today, is you have to keep that up almost the entire game. The precision and accuracy is at a very high level when you play like this, with the h-pawn moving all the way up here. And then one move, queen b2, followed by another, and it was game over.
He needs to play that rook, because if he does take the pawn on d4, white can challenge the Eli